what I want to talk about is very different to what you've heard this morning, because you've heard, I would say, some of the best examples you get at any conference in Ireland on climate change, of how brilliant things are being done by business and by local authorities, etc., etc. So, so that's all wonderful. So why not leave it? I mean, most of the carbon is reduced by the big industries, etc., etc., or is it? So why not leave it to them? So what are we talking about communities here for? Well, firstly, I suppose what Peter Thorne said this morning really captured it for where we are. For me, is that it's not just the biggest challenge we face as a society; it's the existential challenge that we face. Um, so this is not just another problem like, well, we've got to get a new road from here to, I don't know, the north or whatever. This is just on a different stratosphere. It's what I've noticed since I started to work in this area about 7 years ago, is that the change has accelerated way beyond, much quicker than was anticipated. Um, so, and it's all due to human behaviour. That was very clearly set out this morning. So we can't blame, the natural changes in the earth, which the naysayers would have used that excuse at the very start. So that's on that side. We're also, by the way, as a society, one of the worst performers in Europe on quite a number of parameters. So not only are we part of a worldwide problem causing carbon footprint to rise, but we're actually one of the worst societies in Europe. So communities, to me, then, are absolutely crucial to the solution, because our communities, first of all, an awful lot of people are influenced by communities, families, all that type of interaction that you get, the conversations in communities. So I'll be just referring a little bit to the journey being taken by Tullamore Rugby Club, because it kind of mirrors, I think, the way one of the approaches that needs to be taken to trying to move communities. And don't forget, we're all very, very scared of change. Not scared, but we're actually we try and push change away from us all, and so we put our heads down. And in the early days of the talk about climate change, you would have heard all sorts of opposition, and you had the deniers and all that. There are very, very few deniers left out there now, but there's a lot of people staying very quiet. And what we've got to do is reach out to them, and that's where the whole community thing comes in. There's 270 community groups in the PPN in the Tullamore, the larger municipal district. That just gives an idea of the potential that's out there to be tapped into. And it's essentially what we're embarking on is a program of persuasion. If people feel they're being vilified and being pushed into a corner and being shamed, they're not going to respond to you. But at the same time, there's certain facts have to be put on the table. So you're balancing this whole nice approach to a few fairly sharp calling the shots approach to communities. Communities get very interested when they hear the word opportunities. And I love to see the slide there this morning that you're being asked to contribute to. This is we have to look on this situation as an opportunity for Ireland, as an opportunity for our communities and for our community groups. And we approached it like that in Tullamore Rugby Club. Communities pay taxes, and I can assure you, in 30 years' time, from what we've done already, we're going to be paying a hugely larger, substantial proportion of our taxes just to stand still on the adaptation work that is going to have to be done. If you think of all the population centres around the outside of Ireland, and sea level rise and lower, the flooding that's going to come from that, and also in not just in those communities, but right across the country. So that's going to try. And then communities elect politicians. So eventually, with more knowledgeable communities, you will get the political system responding in a much more I suppose, vibrant way than would have been the case up to about 10 years ago. So I really believe in this. I think when you get a number of people together and they have the dialogue, and it's the power is often in the dialogue, in having the discussion about it, that change happens. And you've got to create the conditions for this to happen right across Offaly and right across Tullamore now. And that's why the council's initiatives are of crucial importance. I'm really impressed with the work they've done to date. So again, not to be overawed, let's just eat the elephant in small bites. People feel overwhelmed now. There's information coming at them from every direction. So I found in the rugby club that people had all sorts of ideas, and they'd actually switched off quite a lot to hearing any more messages about climate change. So we've got to really communicate very carefully here. But we have come a long way, and that's what the boy says to the donkey. He said, "We've such a long way to go." He was going up the hills, as you can see. But the donkey said back, a very wise donkey said, "Yes, but look how far we've come." And when you see the examples that we've heard here this morning, you see we really have come a long way. So good news story is a very important part of the story. This is the most persuasive slide I've used in the last 7 years, because it's just showing, and it only goes up to 2016, but the bars get redder, as you can even imagine. I haven't got my up-to-date one here. But I always look at that blue bar on the right-hand side and say, well, what's that doing in there? Why was that year so cold? And if this climate change thing is happening, and it really gets across the point of what's the difference between climate and weather. And most people still haven't really got a grasp of that. So if we have a very cold winter next year, we'll have said, oh, this all climate change stuff, it's all rubbish anyway. So again, this tool we use in the rugby club, distributed widely, etc. Most people in communities don't know the difference between adaptation and mitigation. And I think that's something we really got to try and get across. And once that's learning, we had a number of focus groups in the rugby club in the early days of the project to try and get people to understand some basics, but also to come up with ideas. And here we've got the DZ on the right. So again, this is a graph I've often used in any change process, but the urgency has got to be set out very clearly. And I think it is being set out very well. You've got to do all these steps to get something to really sit. So as well as the short-term wins in number 6 there, which is a crucial thing to do. If you're going into a community, starting to talk about climate change and starting to talk about the changes that they have to make, do some projects that are going to get the early wins, and that gets your buy-in for you. And the fact that there is sufficient, quite a lot of funding available through the Community Climate Action Fund, and we were very significant beneficiaries of that in the rugby club, that's a great help in terms of the persuasion, because the projects that are being chosen are not being chosen just for the sake of that community. They're being chosen as the ones that can be looked at by other communities. And the members themselves, we have 500 members they can actually learn from. So we'll be putting a lot of solar panels up, and sure as I know within 5 years that at least 100 of those 500 members would have added solar panels to their house because of what they see in the rugby club. And that's the same for any community, and that's the advantage of having the availability of those grants. So that's the zone. Again, this whole idea of people getting around the table, discussing things, don't underestimate its power. Okay, so there's a few points here. I won't labour it with you, but I think it's very, very important. The last point there, it's a crucial part of the democratic process. We're in an era now where democracy, it's under a little bit more threat, I think you'd agree, than it was perhaps 5 years ago worldwide. So strengthening democracy means listening to our citizens, not just through the electoral boxes, which is the primary way, but listening to their voice through the other avenues. And a very strong PPN, probably PPN in Offaly here, where the voice of the communities is articulated and fed into the decision-making processes. we often think about communities as just being communities of place. Just that's the rugby club there. That's up in Spallinstown. That's the Tiny Towns group in Clara or whatever. But think about all of the other communities that are out there, and I think it's very important to focus on networking these communities, and that's where the local authority can again come into it. So if the rugby club, for example, is successful in its initiatives, and we're at a very early stage in the process, to be quite frank with you, if it's successful, then other sports clubs and other communities locally, and also local communities, will see and learn from that example. These are just a few learnings that I've taken from the work I've done. Um, we're a great country to respond to crisis. Look at how we handled COVID. Look at how we handled the last recession. This is a longer term. We're just barely seeing or slowly seeing the effects of climate change. So, it's kind of it's almost a natural thing, not to see that 30 years down the road, this is going to be a very different country, and we need to act now. Information, I think there's information overload out there in one way, in the sense there's facts being thrown at people, and so you will not persuade people with facts alone. They do have a role, so don't throw. If you're trying to persuade your community members to do something, please don't do that. Um, and okay, I just do one more here. How information is presented has a big influence. So that's what I meant by that graph. So I was just speaking to the climate action team here earlier, and they're very keen to develop new methodologies to interact and to communicate with communities as time goes on. So it's the skill in communication that's really going to be essential here, I think. So we've made some very early progress in a rugby club. The potential is enormous. Again, how many people should you involve in a committee? Well, we found you need 2 or 3 really committed people to make anything work. You have your larger committee if you want on climate change or on sustainability or whatever, but really, most work in most areas is done by a small minority who will drive the whole project. And in fact, sometimes too many people around the table when you're trying to get quotations in, etc., can be a bit of a hindrance. So the other thing we've learned is we've networked now with through the IRFU with other rugby clubs who are now looking to us for as examples of progress, and we're looking across the border. There's a lot of cross-border opportunities to cooperate with clubs in the north of Ireland, and that, from my experience in Cavan, fulfills an awful lot of other goals apart from the climate goals. So that's it very briefly. Certainly not something to be boasting about what we've achieved, but I think something to be proud of.